Welcome to the Value Investor TV podcast. My name is Beko and my partner Hari. Welcome to this podcast. We'll talk about a few companies that we discussed in the past, especially given the current situation with the coronavirus outbreak. We'll talk about a few companies as we discussed in the previous episode. So Hari, take us away with the disclaimer first.
Yeah, this is the Value Investor TV podcast. We're a podcast that helps you understand the concepts behind value investing. We don't know your specific financial situation, nor do we know, anything about you. So please consult with a financial advisor before making any financial decisions. So,
that was awesome. We don't know anything about you. That was great. So please, all jokes aside, please consult your financial advisor before making any decisions. Okay. Coronavirus is rocking the world.
Yeah.
Hari, you want to say something?
Yeah, but I mean, if you want us to know something about you, you can send us an email, info@valueinvestor.org, and get on our Slack channel. Send us an email first, info@valueinvestor.org. You can pull over right now if you're driving in the car, pull out your phone and send us an email there. But, the email, we can give you our checklist, which we talked about in the last episode. But also on our Slack channel, you can kind of have real-time conversations with both Beko and I and everyone else in the community. And we're really trying to use that as a way to get a hold of everyone. It's totally free. It doesn't cost you a dime. And you just install the app on your phone, and then you can message us with questions, or if you have an investment idea, or if you want to just catch up on news. We all have channels there for inside Slack for that.
Perfect. We would love to get to know you through Slack.
Yes.
Is what Hari's saying.
Yeah.
All right. So this is another episode to talk that we want to bring to you related to the coronavirus. As we talked about in the previous episode, we talked about the virus itself, how it's impacting the world, and how it's impacting the economy, the GDP, different types of industry, Europe, different geography. We talked about all of that in the previous episodes. In this episode, we want to revisit some of the companies that was highly requested by people in the Slack community, but also between myself and Hari, we're interested in these companies. So first, let's talk about the Southwest Airlines. This has been, a longtime favorite of yours and many others in the Slack community. Obviously, this is very important and relevant given that coronavirus is impacting the tourism industry and, as it relates to that, the airline industry.
Yep.
Right? Airline industry has been hit hard, very hard by this coronavirus outbreak. And Southwest obviously is mostly domestic. Right? They do fly international to Canada and some other countries in the Caribbeans and in Mexico and things like that. But even then, people are afraid to fly. Period. Right? Everyone's just afraid to fly. People are afraid to travel. So, given all the situation, given this scare, and people taking extra precautions, how do you think about this business at this point, Hari?
Yeah. So I want to point out that during the crash of 2008, Southwest Airlines was the only company that did not get a bailout from the government. And the reason for that was they were well funded. They had their debt levels under control, and they had a business that was fairly resilient, even in that economy, because they were a lower cost provider than many of the other businesses like American and Delta. So one of the things that I find very interesting about Southwest Airlines is that, they are a very, very well run business, and I would highly encourage everyone to go and listen to the podcast. The thing that's now happening is that we're seeing a huge reduction in the number of people traveling, and that reduction is going to have a big impact on Southwest and everybody in the airline industry. But I think it's very likely that Southwest is not going to suffer, a long-term shutdown. They're not going to face bankruptcy. They have liquidity reserves that they can hit. We haven't mentioned this before, but the oil and gas, pricing is going to drop significantly as a result of OPEC's pumping more barrels of oil. And so what we're going to see is a huge change in their business, But I think a year from now, we're probably going to see them operating like they would, and this is going to be a temporary shock, right? And so it's an opportunity for us to really spend some time looking at that company, paying attention to their valuation. And I think what we're going to end up seeing is that below a certain threshold, I think it's going to be around $35, you will see a business that is well worth owning. And
one thing I just want to mention there is, when we talked about, again, as Hari mentioned, I encourage everybody to go listen to the Southwest Airlines episode. One of the things that you brought up in that episode, and I think this is going to be a consistent theme throughout this current episode as we look at other companies, Southwest Airline has been pretty powerful and pretty beneficial from shareholder perspective because of not only good business but also buybacks that they've initiated, right? So from that standpoint, it's a fantastic business. As as the stock price is going down, they might initiate more aggressive buybacks, for example.
Right.
And from our standpoint, it's a fantastic opportunity to buy with the buyback.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to see their long-term growth rates were going to be around 6, 7 to 8%, somewhere in that range. But with their buybacks, their earnings per share can go up to 25% growth rates. And so, to me, that tells you that there is going to be a floor to this that may be higher than most people would expect, right? Because this company has cash available. They can go in and buy their stock back. Now, they may stop that because of liquidity concerns or having to shut down some of their travel. But one of the things that I would encourage people to do is if you go onto our Slack channel, I've posted some articles from Barron's about the airline industry as a whole, and I would highly encourage everyone to read those as a place to find more insight into what's going on about pricing, expenses, and so forth with them.
Yeah, exactly. Regarding the buyback, maybe I just want to pose you this question, Hari. With the, obviously a lot of these companies have loaded up on debt to be able to do these giant buybacks, right? That people are basically the entire corporate America. Maybe this is exaggeration, but a lot of corporate America has went ahead and took on a bunch of debt to buy back their shares. Now, say for example you have a company that's pretty well run, you got a pretty good moat, and there's a room to even extend that leverage even more to buy back at this point because the price is so low. What do you think about that policy?
Well, so I am heavily in favor of companies spending money to do the buyback when it's timed well. The problem is that if you don't know how long the crisis is going to be, you don't know how long you're going to need the money, it may be difficult to gauge when is the so you're going to hoard your cash just to be safe, right? So what I would say right now is this is a company that you would want to own for 10 years, right? Or 20 years, because it's such a good business. So it doesn't matter as much about the short term, about what their buybacks are going to be, because they'll eventually get back to them if they're not already going to continue them. What your real focus should be is this a good business? And is this a good business that I want to own, right? I don't fly on any other airline because I don't like them, right? Southwest is a great airline, right? And they're a great airline because they actually treat their customers well, and they have a lot of respect for the customer service aspect of their business. And I would say that that's a really important part of why they're such a good business. And that doesn't change in a recession, and that doesn't change long term, right? So I would highly encourage everyone to look at them.
Sounds good. Let's take a look at another company that was brought to our attention, NVR. Let's talk about that. Right. This has been a long favorite of yours, Hari, as well. And if I remember correctly, you said if I just bought that and then just sat on my rear end, I would have made so much more money than what you've had, right?
Yeah.
The NVR has been pretty amazing in terms of the compounding growth aspect of this all, right? Just being able to buy back their shares. I mean, again, like this is a theme that I brought up earlier. The buyback program that they've initiated long ago has now really yielded amazing returns for shareholders.
Right.
And, right now, NVR also being hit, as with every other company now with coronavirus. How do you think about their business, and how do you think about the shareholder return?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I'm not going to get into the details of NVR right now, but they have a bigger moat because of the way they build and how they handle their business, right? They are they protect themselves from downside risk pretty well, and then they're also a strong buyback business as well. So sure, they're going to have a temporary hit, and I think the home building industry is not something that people pay attention to, but people are not going to be buying houses when they're worried about getting laid off and things like that. And so you're going to see a large contraction in these kind of large purchases and things like that. And so NVR may be a business that, even though they've lost some value right now, or lost some, their stock price has gone down a little bit, it may not be the final extent of where they go down. And I would say even now, I would still think that they're a bargain because they were cheap. Even on a routine basis, you could get them for fairly cheap. So,
yeah. So NVR, another company to put on your checklist, perhaps at least a company to keep your eyes on. Certainly, especially with this coronavirus sell-off. Another company we wanted to talk about was Alta Beauty.
Yep.
This is a retail company that sells beauty products, a lot of female beauty products. On the podcast, we talked extensively about the competitive advantage, the management, all these other things. But what at the time, we deemed that the company was well run. It had a good moat, but yet it was too expensive. Now with this current situation, again, I'm going to pose the same question to you, Hari. What do you think about Ulta Beauty as it relates to the buying opportunity?
Yeah, so I haven't looked at them as closely as I did NVR and Southwest Airlines, but it's another thing where this is a business that's very well run. We have Becco and I had a lot of admiration for the business itself, the CEO, how they've maintained their operations. It's a tightly run ship, and I think their e-commerce business is still going to be fine. I think there's a lot of things that are, women still need cosmetics, even in a recession. Maybe they'll pare down some of the more expensive purchases, but for the most part, it's still going to be ongoing. So I am not as concerned about a business like that. And these are the kind of businesses that we love to own. We just most of the time can't afford them, right? And so now it's time to reassess. Maybe it's still too expensive, but it would be a company that we would put on our watch list and obviously check on every once in a while to see how things are going.
Yeah, definitely an interesting company. And as you mentioned, you talked about paring down on more expensive items. Ulta Beauty is in fact squarely in that area where you were talking about more on the budget. Obviously they do carry more expensive items, but also they specialize in kind of mass market beauty products. So I think they're well positioned to come out very strong, very, very strong on the other end of this. As we were talking about these different companies, I just got a breaking news that Federal Reserve is going to cut rate to 0 and begin new quantitative easing. The Fed cuts the federal fund rate target range by 100 basis points to 0 to 0.025.
Yeah, and I think that's how they're going to inject that liquidity into the market. So I still think NVR and companies like that will be impacted, but it will be worth, you're going to have to follow those businesses closely and look for that price. And when you get to a margin of safety price that you're comfortable with, you buy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sounds good. Anything to add before we close off, Ari?
Yeah, I think there were a couple other businesses that we saw to add to your checklist. Skechers and Canada Goose, both companies that we admired, but at the time were either too expensive or were not ready to purchase. So just add those two on and go in and look at them, listen to the episode, and then update them from whenever we did the podcast with any new information that you can find. So we just gave you 5 companies that you can add to your watch list, and then start looking to see if they are, businesses that you would be liking, you would like to own. So,
yeah, yeah. As it relates to that, I think a good place that I started, and for you as well, Hari, was 52-week low list. I think it's going to be pretty crowded in there because every company is probably hitting their lowest point the past 52 weeks. But that's always a good place to start. The companies that are trading really low, that have been steeply discounted for some reason, and it's a good place to look for really good businesses.
Yep.
That might be trading just on a discount for temporary reasons.
Yep.
All right. That sounds good. Thank you guys for joining us. And as we mentioned in the previous episode, please reach out to us at info@valueinvestor.org if you want to ask us any questions, get your hands on the Value Investor checklist, or if you want to join our Slack channel. Please email us. We'd be happy to do that for you guys. All right, guys. It's going to be interesting week. Keep your eyes out for opportunities, and keep trying to find the truth, as Hari mentioned.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yep. Thanks, guys.